Okay, I think it's about time to get started. We want to make sure we respect everybody's time here and keep the topic to 30 minutes as we do every month. Thank you for attending the webinar, part of Bowermaster and ESM's monthly series designed as a resource to help educate our clients on the topics that are basically aimed to ultimately reduce our clients' costs. At Bowermaster, our message focuses more on just insurance placement with the most competitive carriers. We really want to strive to be a resource-driven brokerage that is constantly looking at ways to bring deliverables to our clients that have a positive effect on your bottom line, and these monthly webinars are no exception. So on that note, let's dive into the topic for today, claims management and the TAPS process, and basically how to win at managing your claims. One of the most frustrating and costly practices for businesses with regards to workers' compensation in California is the managing of a claim and all of its intricacies once it gets into the system. And on a side note, I want to make sure if questions pop up during this presentation, please feel free to ask them via the chat box on your screen. Due to time constraints, we probably won't have time to answer them today, but all of them will be answered in a follow-up email that goes out post-webinar, and that email will also include a copy of the slides and a link to the video. And lastly, we encourage feedback on any future topics that you think our audience would be helpful, because this whole monthly series is to really help provide a resource that's educational and that ultimately positively affects the bottom line for our insureds. So let's jump right into our presenter. My name is Corey Kroviak. I'm a senior advisor and broker here at Bowermaster. But our main presenter today is Sharon Poston. Sharon is a co-founder at Executive Safety Management Solutions, also known as ESM, and her expertise and over 3 decades of experience navigating the tangled web known as the California workers' compensation marketplace really makes her truly best in class. Bowermaster and ESM's partnership goes back almost a decade now, and Sharon deals with many Bowermaster clients and potential clients on various projects that are aimed to reduce their insurance-related costs. And I mentioned best in class, so I'll note Sharon is an ex-school teacher. So after the webinar is complete, everyone will be receiving a 20-question short answer exam to fill out, because I think she really misses grading all those papers. But all kidding aside, we're really excited to have Sharon presenting today. With that, I'll hand it over to Sharon Poston. Take it away.
Okay, thank you, Corey. I also want to mention that you are eligible for a certificate of completion after you have listened to me talk, and this will come from Bowermaster. It's really a good way for you to present to your supervisors or management that you are actively engaged in learning more about your job duties under workers' compensation. And then Bowermaster will help you and use this in going to market, to letting potential insurers know how actively engaged and involved you are in managing your program. Because if you're saving money, they are too, and so that's finally a good result. Thanks. Welcome everyone back to our monthly webinar series. Our intent, as Corey said, is to give you some tips and tools to manage your workers' compensation claims. And today we will talk about how do you get started to get a handle on your open workers' compensation claims. I mean, really, what should you focus on first? So we're going to take a look at the overview of the life of a claim, and then focus on the claims in your open list that are unresolved. So let's get started. We've created an acronym, TAPS, to help you to manage your claims. We start with a triage of the open claims. That word is probably familiar to you from the MASH series, where the triage is what determined which cases are the most critical and need to be seen first. So we'll talk about triage in a few more minutes. The next step is to analyze the claims and to begin to ask questions. Each claim should have a resolution strategy and target dates for completion. And then next is to ensure that there's a plan of action for the adjuster, for the doctor, for the employee, and for you to follow to get to the resolution phase. And finally, continue to follow up to ensure that the case is moving to settlement and final resolution. Excuse me. Today we'll be focusing on the A and the P section of these TAPS plans, analyzing, asking questions, and developing a plan of action. So let's look at this triage funnel graphically. We'll kind of start at the bottom because that's really where we want things to end up. Closed is the goal, of course. And then as we move up the funnel from there, the next type of claim is one that has been settled by compromise and release, or C&R. This really means that all benefits have ended for the employee, who has released the employer and carrier from any further liability. And often these claims are open just to resolve disputed liens or medical treatment that was provided before the C&R agreement. These claims usually just need a reminder to the adjuster or to the defense attorney to resolve the remaining issues in order to close the claim. But liability for the future exposure has ended in a C&R. And next are those cases that are ready to settle. These are cases in which the healing and recovery process has reached a plateau, and these are cases to follow up with the adjuster to ask for a settlement option and targeted resolution date or hearing date, what it's going to take next to move the case to settlement. The next are the stipulated award cases. These cases also have been resolved. They're only open for a lifetime future medical award. So these are ones that, while they're important, they really are near the end of the funnel and moving to closure. Then finally, we get to the cases that we're going to focus on today. And those are the ones that are unresolved and have ongoing medical treatment and disability. These are the ones where you can have the greatest impact because you often still have a working relationship with the injured employee. So let's press pause for a moment and take a look at the overview of the milestones of a workers' compensation claim. I think if you have a roadmap, it's often easier to find your way through this complicated system of rules and regulations. So our goal and your goal is to shorten the timeline and move the claims through the process more quickly to step 5, which is resolution. Let's just read these key milestones. It all starts with the date of injury. Phase 2 is medical treatment and recovery period. Next is MMI, or maximum medical improvement. We previously called this P&S, permanent and stationary. Now we refer to it as MMI. Next is the assessment of any permanent impairment or permanent disability. And finally, the last step is resolution of permanent disability and any need for future medical care, either by a stipulated award or by a compromise and release. So let's look at these in a little more detail. The date of injury is important because it determines which policy period and which carrier is responsible for managing the claim. It also impacts the experience period for the calculation of your XMOD. The next milestone is the medical treatment and recovery phase. And as you know, this phase can be as few as a few weeks, or it can stretch out to many years. We know that claims do not get better with time, so ensuring that medical treatment is progressing is really an important claims management role for employers. This is a phase where delays occur and a claim can languish and employers become dissatisfied, employees become dissatisfied. This is where they get attorneys. And this really, excuse me, this is where employers can have an impact. And we're going to be talking about that in a few slides ahead. The next key milestone is MMI, or maximum medical improvement. This is a doctor's opinion that a medical condition has stabilized or reached a plateau. This MMI date is a critical date because it triggers a change in benefits. It means the end of temporary disability benefits. It can mean that the medical condition is completely healed and the employee is back to work with no long-term effects and discharged from care. Or it could move to the next phase of determining permanent disability. So once a medical condition has been declared MMI, there will be an assessment of whether or not there is any permanent impairment or any need for future medical care. MMI is a key medical legal milestone and one that we are always pushing for in order to resolve the final issues and move the case to settlement and possible closure. We have the expectation that when you purchase a workers' compensation policy, the claims management is an integral part of that agreement. You agree pay a premium in exchange for the legislated coverages and a claims team that will manage the delivery of benefits as required by the California Labor Code. The details are complex and regulatory, and your job is to run your business, and you expect the insurance company job is to manage the claims. But it really is a complementary relationship because the recipient of the benefits is your employee, and you are ultimately writing the checks. Even if you have a guaranteed cost policy, you will pay for those losses in increased experience modification or increased premiums in subsequent years. So who's watching your claims? You are. Last week, this was an email that an employer sent to the claims adjuster on a claim, and I'm just going to read it to you. Jennifer, Jessica came in today with the attached note with the same restrictions. We cannot accommodate these restrictions. During our conversation, she's telling me that it has been a month that her doctor is waiting for approval for the next set of acupuncture treatment. Who is following her case to make sure that she's getting the proper treatment and that the submissions for treatment are being approved? What is the MMI on this patient? The way this is going, she's going to be out for a year. How can we close this case? You can hear the frustration in Anna's voice. By the way, those are not the real names. I'm guessing that any one of you listening could have written this or a similar email. Anna knows that MMI is the next plateau to reach. She just doesn't know how to get there. I also see a potential flaw in Anna's first paragraph. We cannot accommodate these restrictions. What we don't know is, was there a discussion about the physical requirements of the job? Did Anna and Jessica review the job description together? Did the employee comment on which parts of the job she felt she could do and which parts she could not do? Did they discuss other options? Could she return part-time to do some of it? As we know, movement and activity aid in recovery. I heard a doctor say recently, motion is lotion. I love that. This is a good reminder that we discuss with the employee. Let's get you back to doing something productive here at work to help build your strength and recondition you for employment. This is another email that a nurse case manager sent to the employer when asked about the lag in approval of the doctor's requested treatment for a steroid injection. I'm going to read this one too. Adjuster qualified that the ESI was non-certified by the UR as PTP, Dr. Smith, did not provide substantial medical evidence to support radicular pain. Adjuster responded that UR mailed him their decision, which indicated why the non-cert was issued. Dr. Smith failed to appeal that non-cert and supply any supporting information. Employee did not timely request an IMR. Did you get that? I mean, so many acronyms, references to a process that you have no idea what the heck is UR. There just simply is no reasonable answer or an alternative for how to get the employee back to work and MMI. The question that I hear most often is, why is this claim still open? Well, as we've seen, there needs to be medical recovery, improvement in the symptoms, reduction of pain level. And here are a few of the reasons that without management and oversight, why claims move so slowly through the system. I'm briefly going to talk about the first one listed, delays in medical approval of recommended treatment, UR. You've probably heard that before. UR, oh, it's in UR. What the heck does that mean? Well, this stands for Utilization Review, and it is a strictly defined and regulatory process for medical improvement for treatment. I mean, UR came about, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 years ago. I can't remember exactly how long. And at the time, it was a good idea because doctors were somewhat out of control. There were no medical protocols or guidelines. So the ACOM guidelines of medical protocols were put into place. But over the years, in my opinion, it is not a panacea that it was created to be. It can be cumbersome, it's costly, it's a flawed process. And we're going to talk in a minute about how to maneuver through the UR process. But briefly, this is how it works. An adjuster cannot deny medical treatment. However, they can approve treatment requested by the doctor. The doctor must submit a request for treatment on a specified form called an RFA, Request for Authorization. And along with that, he or she must send supporting reports that state why this treatment is recommended. RFAs are then sent to a nurse or a doctor who reviews the recommended treatment and verifies that it is in accordance with accepted medical protocols. Usually that's the ACOM guidelines. And if yes, the treatment is approved. If no, the treatment is denied or non-certified. All this must be done within 5 days. If the treatment is denied, the doctor can resubmit additional medical findings, or the employee can also object to the treatment denial and request an independent medical review. And all this must be accomplished within 30 days. But what has happened is that we have thrown out reasonableness, analysis, thought, and adjusters just adhere to the rules. And they don't step outside the box and think about what will move this case forward to recovery and to resolution. Let's see how this plays out in a case study. In April, a 34-year-old chef lifted a bread rack from the back of a van. She was leaning over a cart and awkwardly lifted up, causing a strain to her lower back. The employee reported pain to the shoulders, neck, back, right arm from lifting a bread rack and twisting. The rack weighed 80 pounds. Okay, I'll kind of stop right there. Why is the chef doing the work? Probably not really within her physical limitations, perhaps. Why is it weighing 80 pounds? Is there something that can be done with the supplier to say, look, I need to get my bread racks in no more than 40 pounds so that my employees are not injured? I mean, we do this at the airports. We know that you can't have a suitcase weighing more than 50 pounds because that puts additional stress on the personnel of the airline who have to lift your suitcase. So the same could be true. We can make adjustments if we just stop and take a look at, wait a minute, no one person should be lifting 80 pounds in a bending over position. So is there another person to help? How do we modify that? It's kind of a thought process of stepping back and saying, wait a minute, how can we improve this? What corrective action could be taken so that this doesn't happen again? So the employee had pain centralized in her upper back and now radiating down her right arm. And a cortisone shot and an MRI were initially denied. A cervical or neck MRI was performed on 8/2 of this year. So April, May, June, July, August, 4 months go by. And now look at the timeline continuing. The date of injury was April. We're now in October, and the employee is still trying to get the recommended treatment that will promote recovery. So finally, the treating doctor says, you know what, I can't do anything more. Let's get a specialist to take a look at her and see what else can be done. So that referral to the orthopedist was approved. Problem, the specialist can't see her for 7 weeks. So this is considered acceptable by the adjuster, and she just continues to issue temporary disability checks while waiting for the appointment. She puts it on automatic pay and moves the file from her desk for the next 7 weeks. But wait a minute. If this were you and you were in pain, would you just say, okay, I guess I'll just wait for 2 months to go to the next level of treatment? Well, I wouldn't, and you probably wouldn't either. And then let's look at the cost to the employer. So 7 weeks of TD, temporary disability, at $850 a week equates to nearly $6,000, or 3 points on the XMOD. If this case continues with disability payments of 8 months, the employer's primary threshold on the XMOD will be reached, and the result will be 14-point increase in the MOD that will stay with you for the next 3 years. So, you know, to the claims adjuster, it's all status quo. You know, it seems like, okay, next. But to you, it makes a great deal of difference. Personally, because you've got your employee to deal with, she's complaining, she wants to come back to work, you've got a gap because you need her there, and then financially, because each one of those weeks off work costs you money in the long run. While there are very, very many hardworking and conscientious claims adjusters handling workers' compensation claims, this didn't happen to be one of them. There was literally no communication about the UR process. She didn't call the doctor and say, "Doctor, you know, it looks like your treatment request just needs to have some further documentation. Could you please substantiate what your request is, and so then we can get the treatment authorized?" And then this was a Spanish-speaking employee. She didn't call him through an interpreter to explain how he could move the case forward. He could request an independent medical review, IMR, and how he could go about doing that. She didn't look at the medical evidence to note that the MRI had positive findings and that an epidural steroid injection might help relieve the pain so the employee could get back to work. Remember, the adjuster can approve treatment requests. She just can't deny them. So now the employer steps in. He said, "This is not acceptable." And he asked for a conference call with the supervisor. Then the options were discussed, and these were the results. So the claims supervisor agreed to override the denied utilization review and approve the steroid injection due to the fact that there were objective findings on the MRI, and also because an orthopedist coming up in 7 or 8 weeks, whenever that is, was also likely to recommend the same type of treatment. So it seemed reasonable and right to approve and override the utilization review denial. She agreed to do that. Then the supervisor agreed to assign a Spanish-speaking field case nurse to meet with the employee and the treating doctor within the next 1 or 2 weeks to explain options and discuss treatment strategy. So while we're waiting for the orthopedist to examine him, we're going back to the treater, talking about what treatment plan there is, making sure that the epidural steroid injection takes place, that everything moves forward. That's kind of our next action plan. So the nurse case manager is going to coordinate that medical referral and also get the patient in on the next available cancellation list for the orthopedist, or look for another orthopedist. I mean, as you probably know in your own personal experience, sometimes it's difficult to get into a doctor, but maybe there is someone else within the network that they could refer to. So then the employer called the employee to discuss modified duty options as they are waiting for this orthopedist appointment. I mean, mostly in life, maybe you have a shoulder or neck problems that prevent you from doing some of the heavy lifting of the job. Maybe she does. But the truth is, you go on with your activities of daily living. She's 34, maybe she has children. So, you know, is she lifting children? Is she getting up and bathing and caring for herself and shopping for groceries and fixing dinner? And all of those activities of daily living, she can do those. So there must be some things that she can do. So how can we get her back into the world of work? Remember, motion is lotion. You get her moving as she's recovering. It's not only physically good, it's emotionally good, mentally good, and it keeps the employee tied to you as the employer so that she wants to come back to work. And then the parties agreed to follow up with a conference call in 2 weeks to discuss the status and the results. So, I mean, I know it sounds like a lot, but it takes that kind of pushing to get cases through the system. I know we all deal with these frustrations. That's why you're on the line right now. What are some ways that you can get through this system that we have created here in California that is so complex? Well, I say that employers must remain vigilant with accountability and timelines for medical treatment and claims management. It's essentially the job of the claims adjuster and the insurance company to do those things. But as I said before, you can work in cooperation to make sure that those things do happen. And you will benefit from that because in reduced cost, getting the employee back to work, satisfied employee, and so on. The frustration for me is that the workers' comp system thinks that 3 months or more of no medical progress is acceptable. I mean, it would not be acceptable to you personally in your life if you had no signs of improvement in your medical condition in 3 months. And then 7 weeks to get to a specialist is considered acceptable. It just means that the adjuster can move the file off her desk. She doesn't have to worry about it anymore. But to me, that's not the appropriate answer. there needs to be other action and steps taken to make sure that the employee is recovering or doing something during that 7-week lapse, if that's what it takes. And then the utilization review to ensure appropriate treatment per the ACOM guidelines is often flawed. And adjusters will stand firmly on the belief that, well, you are said no, so I can't do anything about it. That is not true. They can approve treatment that is reasonable and looks like it will move the case forward. The goal of UR was to, as I said before, was to prevent doctors from prescribing types of treatment that really had no evidence-based medicine. But now doctors that are within the medical provider network should know what is acceptable within the ACOM guidelines. Those are accepted standards for California now and have been for many years. So it probably is within the ACOM guidelines, but there's usually some little glitch. You know, the doctor didn't check the right box or send the right report, or it didn't go to the right place, or it wasn't done timely. I mean, the list goes on and on of how many flaws and errors can take place in that utilization review process. So if an adjuster says to you, nothing I can do about it, it was denied, not true. Ask them to reconsider, go above them, escalate this to the supervisor or the claims manager so that you can see if you can get a different answer. Okay, whew. This sounded like a lot of negatives, but I'm hoping that you see that there are things that you can do and that it is beneficial if you become engaged and involved with your employee and with your claims adjuster. So keep asking questions. Ask questions that you think are reasonable. Maybe you don't understand the system. Maybe you don't understand the full UR process and the MMI and all of the other medical legal terms and acronyms, but you know what's reasonable. And so ask reasonable questions and keep asking them until you get a reasonable answer. And if you don't get one, then escalate your unanswered questions to the carrier supervisor or the claims manager to see if you can get additional answers. Then ensure accountability by following up with all parties on agreed upon action plans, including your own role in that. You know, what can you do engaging with your employee to make sure that they are understanding the process and that you are coaching them and advising them to get back to work and to recover from their level of pain. I know this is a lot of time that you have to engage, especially initially in a case to get it moving forward. But time spent now, I believe, will result in less cost later and keeping a workforce, a responsible and productive workforce for you to run your business. So I hope that was a good way for you to take a look at what things you can do. There are positive steps that you can take. Okay, Corey, I will turn it back to you.
Okay, thanks, Sharon. You know, we always appreciate your unmatched expertise in this field, and the clear and easy presentation that you give is really easy for us to understand. And I'll note here, while the claims management topic is really heavy on educational content with a lot of acronyms, and just the whole cycle of which a claim goes through, especially when it becomes litigated, it should be looked at as a real critical area where our clients and businesses as a whole can control and influence the final outcome more so than a lot of other parts of workers' compensation and insurances in general. So we at Bowermaster we understand this, and as our client, we want to give you the tools and the knowledge, as well as working directly with your broker and the carrier to produce these positive results. So I'll tell you from experience, claims adjusters have dozens, if not hundreds, of cases on their desk at any given time. And if you have heard the old term, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, that couldn't be more true in workers' compensation claims management. Simply just keeping the case in front of an adjuster, keeping it front and center through constant communication with the adjuster has shown to really dramatically improve your results and move claims quicker to closure and to better outcomes. And that's what we're here to help you do. So on that note, we'll wrap for today. And just want to point out that our final webinar in 2018 is on your screen there, November 21st, same time, same place. This will be managing the first 5 critical days of an injury. So that's going to be very important because the way that the XMOD has calculated these since 2017 is that there's a primary threshold number where the first certain dollar amount, and it's different for every company, that is the only dollar amount that really affects your experience mod. So managing the first 5 critical days after an injury is huge in limiting that initial number. So we hope to see you out there at this webinar. We will go dark for December for our webinar series and pick it back up in 2019. But you can't get rid of us completely in December because we do have our end of the year Human Resources Employment Law Seminar on Wednesday, December 5th at the Sheraton Cerritos that you should have seen an email invite for. And if you haven't, we'll continue sending those out. Please register. These are really educational. Of course, no cost to our clients and prospects. We would love to see you guys out there. And thanks again for joining us today, and look forward to seeing you at our future events. Take care.